guys, this one is going to be a fucked up one. Hey.
Are you guys ready to regurgitate with TMZ news now?
Yes. Which is not a thing that I thought I was ever going to do.
I did.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought at some point we'd hit TMZ. I just didn't think it'd be like this great.
You guys have weird expectations.
They pulled it off, okay?
Yeah. You're right.
Let's hit the intro. Not the best way to start this episode, but here we
Yeah.
are. This is James,
This is Alex.
This is Patrick.
and welcome back to Dynamic Trio Podcast, the number one podcast in this house. Yeah. Okay, guys, I need the hype. I need the hype here.
Get it! Get it! Bro, your face is so red.
I can't breathe.
So today we are going to talk about something a little, controversial.
I got really hot. This episode is going to be a rough one.
Yeah, so we're going to try and keep it as
It almost makes you wonder, why are we doing it?
Because
it's hot news.
And it's crazy.
And also, we already do conspiracy stuff sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is up right up our alley.
Yeah.
I'll allow it.
We do want to say before we start, we do fully want to pay respects to all the victims of the events that took place on this date. And we do understand the seriousness of everything. We'll do our best to not be complete assholes about the whole thing. I don't know. What do you guys
Even though
think?
we have made multiple jokes about this.
No, we
in the
have
past.
not. We have not
It's
made...
on tape.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll pull up the episode right now.
Shut up!
Episodes.
I'm trying to keep us online.
We don't have to do this episode, James.
We do.
Okay.
It's a trending topic. Now, let's start with this. You guys might be wondering what we're talking about. TMZ recently has just become like this, just dropped these amazing documentaries. First, they dropped the fifth plane, United Flight 23. They also dropped one about the real murderer of Michael Jackson. Well, not murder, but the real reason why he died.
Yeah.
Right. And now I guess as of today, they also dropped something about P. Diddy. I haven't opened it yet. I haven't watched it, but it looks like they're covering the P. Diddy case as well.
Yeah.
With that being said, this was a bombshell. I don't know. What was your reaction when you guys heard this even existed?
Actually, Patrick was talking to me about this earlier. He didn't even know that there was a fourth plane. So, let alone a fifth plane.
Yeah. No, I was surprised by that.
Yeah.
And,
You're the reader in the group, my guy.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm reading fantasy.
Yeah, I'm reading literature. I'm reading feminist literature.
He's reading smart.
I'm reading feminist literature.
Smart.
That's the fancy way to say it.
Yeah.
Literature.
Oh, God.
I can't believe you said that right before we're talking about 9/11.
We also want to say that, the TMZ doc, I didn't watch it, but I think that I would just want to let it know that we're all taking it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Because it is
Yes.
a doc. It's a take. You know what I mean? And it's an interesting take that I think is worth talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All jokes aside, our hearts are still with the victims of the September 11 attacks. And at the end of the day, we are on the Team USA.
Regardless of how you feel about the 9/11 situation, it changed our country forever.
Yep.
And and there's no denying that.
Yeah. So, TMZ dropped one of the biggest bombshells out of nowhere on 9/11 in the most recent years. It's just exactly what it sounds like. It's the fifth plane. It goes over United Flight 23. And let's just do a really quick recap of what happened. Some of you guys are young, and apparently we have not noticed how old we are. But I guess there are people who actually don't understand the severity of what happened in 2001.
Yeah, I've seen videos where college students don't even know what it really actually was.
Yeah. Well, to make it simple, we'll go down by the time. At 8:46 in the morning, a plane hit the World Trade Center. At first, no one understood what happened. They thought it was an accident. At 9:03 a.m., a second plane hits the World Trade Center, the other tower. By this point, it was assumed and people understood that the country was under attack. At 9:37 in the morning, a plane hit the Pentagon at the 5th corridor. This one shook everyone to their core because it was very clear they were attacking very specific sites. At 10:03 a.m., another plane crashes, but this time in Pennsylvania. This one crashed in a field. Passengers heroically fought with the hijackers to prevent them from hitting their ultimate target, the U.S. Capitol or White House. The passengers took over the plane and brought it all down to prevent another attack. By the bass in my voice, you can obviously tell we are trying to be very serious about this, but those attacks, like Patrick said, changed our country forever. It's the reason why we have very strict TSA laws in the United States. It's the reason why there are many strict background checks as well. It is what it is. These attacks changed the feeling of security in our country from then on.
All right. So the reason for this TMZ documentary, they found out that there was a possible fifth plane, which is honestly baffling.
TMZ is stating that there could have been a fifth plane. And now they have the eyewitness testimonies and people on board this flight to corroborate this idea. So let's get into it. We are talking about United Flight 23 heading to Los Angeles. United Flight 23 on September 11th was heading to Los Angeles. It was a normal, beautiful day, and everyone was happy. Barbara, a flight attendant, was working in the economy section, and there were 7 crew members on board. Safety checks were done. Menu printout was incorrect. This is where the doc takes a little bit of a turn. Turns out that during the preparation of the flight, one of the main things is meals, right? It's a long flight to Los Angeles from the Kennedy Airport. Therefore, they want to make sure all passengers are comfortable and they have all their necessities taken care of. A person on the documentary did not want to be named or shown, so they will go by Deborah. They were the purser. Deborah had 4 people on board in first class, and they did not eat meat. So she tried to get them fruit plates. And she tried this for a long time while passengers were boarding on the plane. Now, keep in mind, it was not a full plane.
And also keep in mind, like these 4 people, one of them was in a hijab, one of them was wearing a tan suit, one of them was like a bodyguard, and there was also a child with him.
Don't roll over my story ever again. We got to bring the comedy in somehow, folks. If Alex is right, yes, there was a taller man in a suit, a young boy, 6 or 7 years old, a woman in a burqa or hijab. We are not completely sure. They did use both words in the documentary, and a gentleman that sort of appeared to be a bodyguard from the attire. Now, there was a strange thing. The staff notified that the woman wearing the burqa raised suspicion. It was very tight, and they could barely see through the eyes. Staff notified others that they were concerned that it was a man. Their hands were big and hairy.
Oh,
Yeah, body shaming, huh?
dude.
Again, folks, comedy's
Even
gonna
in
come
2001?
Yeah.
Crazy.
right.
And they also took notice and they saw that there was somebody in the back and he was seated away from them, but he was sweating profusely.
I swear to fucking God, if you keep bulldozing my story right now,
We both saw the documentary.
I know it's not my story. Fuck you. Again, folks, comedy. Anyways,
I'm enraptured.
Yeah.
you've been raptured? You don't believe in God?
You've been raptured? Dude, we haven't. You out of the 3 of us? What's this bullshit?
I'm not gonna lie, I'm on his side. It's bullshit if you get raptured before either one of us.
Yeah.
Actually, I completely believe that I would get raptured over both of you.
And that's why you're a narcissist. That's why you're a narcissist. The most narcissistic shit I've ever heard you say was right now.
I hate you. I hate you. The idea.
But yes,
lucky.
I
You're
kid.
lucky we don't rule the world right now.
I kid.
But yes, so
But
this
you're
guy,
lucky
he was-
I don't, because then I RKO the fuck out of both of you.
so yes, this guy was. So yeah, this guy was sweating profusely through his shirt,
Correct.
and like it was a brisk morning,
Yeah.
and the planes are always supposed to be cold. So him sweating profusely is kind of like it's
weird.
throwing up some red flags.
You know?
So, of the 4 people we mentioned, and plus the sweaty guy, there was a man in a tan suit, and he had the child. He asked one of the stewardess to go into the cockpit with the child, but by this point of the flight, of getting on board, they were not allowing people into the cockpit or get close at all.
Okay.
You seem a little surprised, Patrick.
No, I'm just kind of like, okay, yeah.
Okay, because
Okay.
like I don't know if you know, but like sometimes they'll have like people ask if they can like see like the
Yeah.
cockpit and stuff like that, like
Yeah.
kids who are like excited and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that stopped happening after 9/11.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
they got trading cards or something on board some flights too.
Yeah,
Ooh, it's
yeah.
cool. Yeah.
Now they really don't want you to see that the pilots are drunk.
Well, later on, the man and the child were actually just seen staring into the cockpit later on,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this was after they were already told no, but they were seen staring. Kind of creepy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe they're rich and they're not used to being told no.
Mm.
So they're just like, yo, what are they trying to hide? I bet there's money in there. That they're trying to keep from us.
Is that gold?
Love the idea how we're still acting like we don't know what happens at the end of the story.
I don't.
Oh yeah, Patrick does not know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Now keep in mind this is all happening while people were boarding the plane still. Now the purser continued to attempt to get the fruit plates throughout this whole time. And after a timely attempt to accommodate the people who didn't eat meat, they ultimately said it was fine and to just get on with it. Those 4 people that we
All
mentioned
agreed.
all agreed. They don't eat meat, but just get on with it. We don't need food. But she was at
Like they were very urgent.
Yeah.
They're just like, we don't need food. We just want to take off.
Yeah.
We don't need food.
Yeah.
hey man, did you take my notes? What the
No,
heck?
I
That was
took my
exactly
own
what I
separate
said.
notes.
We're prepared. All right. Anyways, as the plane prepared to take off, a gentleman, a worker, asked if they had heard about a fire in the World Trade Centers to the pilot. The pilot have said, of course not. How would they hear about that right now?
Yeah.
Right? Now, they kind of thought that it just would have been a small plane and they just attempted to go between the towers or something ridiculous, right? They
Yeah.
assumed it was an accident.
Yeah. This is like 2001, early ass internet.
Yeah.
If you didn't walk by a news report, you didn't know what was happening.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, because of this, they thought nothing of it. Now, they began to taxi around, and there's an unusual thing, and I don't know if Alex picked up on this during the documentary. They noticed that they had 10 or 11 planes in front of them while they were taxiing. This caused delays, because they normally would have had, on a morning like this, 2 or 3 planes. Now, these delays ultimately could have been what saved them from getting into the air and causing catastrophe.
Okay.
So, just by the grace of God,
Yeah.
10 or 11 planes instead of 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Amazing.
maybe it was because of all the stuff that was happening before, and then they were just grounding all the planes.
It was too early.
Was
This
too
was
early?
only barely when the first tower got hit.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah, so nothing would have been done by this point.
Okay.
Now, over the radio, they heard a plane had hit the World Trade Center. Now, they assumed, like I said, they assumed it was a small plane just doing something risky. But then they heard over the radios that it was an airliner, and that's when they were shocked. The pilot announced that it was going to be an extensive delay because by this point they realized this is something bigger. Even before the first plane hit the tower, though, the TMZ documentary states that people at United and American knew there were hijackings. Now, we could have misunderstood this, but that is what the TMZ documentary is claiming. How true is this? I don't know. I don't really read the documentaries. I mean the fucking the thingies, the documents.
The documents. Okay.
Dude, it's 600 pages long, man.
Yeah.
I can't get through that thing.
Yeah, for sure.
And we'll get to that point at some point, right?
Yeah.
Now, as United 23 moved up the runway, dispatch announced, beware cockpit intrusion. Yeah. The pilot,
Like, imagine hearing that when you're on the planes.
Be like, hey, just keep an eye out because somebody might try and get you.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, the pilot believed someone would be making a threat to the airplane, and they barricaded themselves in the cockpit. And they prepared for the worst. They armed themselves with items in the cockpit to fight back, just in case.
Like, they had a fire extinguisher in the front and then also an axe.
You know, safety tools basically in case of emergencies.
And so they put, like, suitcases in front of the door to try to barricade it.
Yeah.
And then just held the axe and the fire extinguisher for their defense.
That's the thing about like literally like 9/11 changed the world, or not, at least the country, so much, because now if there's even a whiff of anything,
Yeah.
they don't go in the air at all anymore.
No.
But this is pre all of this stuff. It's
Yeah.
basically a different world.
It's unheard of.
So they're just kind of like, all right, well, these people still got to go.
Yeah.
Now it's like, no, you're not going anywhere
Yeah.
until we frisk every single one of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, by this point, the crew notified the pilot of the 5 suspicious gentlemen on board. People on board began calling relatives and family to confirm that they were okay, because by this point, the towers have been hit. People are calling each other and going, it's pandemonium.
Yeah.
Everyone's going crazy. Everyone's scared out of their minds. It's happening now.
Yeah.
A terror attack is happening. And they began receiving the news of what had happened in New York. The Kennedy ground control came on and said, the airport is officially closed. We've been ordered to evacuate this facility and you are on your own. This was the message to the pilots.
On your own.
Yeah.
Again, seriously, listeners, I wanted you to just think about like how different the world is now. We have plans about this shit now.
Yeah.
Like we have plans, and now it's just like you're on your own.
Yeah.
This feels like the Wild West.
It really is. Like,
Yeah.
That's what I heard too. That when if you talk to a lot of if you watch some other documentaries, they talk about how it was a Wild West in the air at that point because you don't know which planes were still being hijacked. You don't know which planes were safe, and everyone was just coming down. I mean, there was planes that were landing in Canada with people who had no clearance to land over borders, right?
Yeah.
So it was just pandemonium.
Yeah.
Flight 23. They decided to go back to their terminal, and they notified the passengers that they were heading back and to grab their things and deboard quickly. They had no issues with that, obviously understanding the seriousness of the situation. Now, on the way out, keep note of this. Someone asked if the terrorists had hit the White House. And obviously the staff said, well, there's no way to know right now.
Yeah.
But that's really specific.
That's so suspicious.
Yep. Well, by this point, while people were boarding off the plane now, pilots checked through the peephole on their door to see if everyone was gone. An airplane mechanic signaled them and told them the pilot to get off as well and was ordered to lock up the airplane. They did that. They got off the plane was locked up.
So
Now-
everybody at this point has evacuated. The plane is empty.
Yeah.
Yes. They checked all rows. They checked the bathrooms. Nobody was left on the plane. And it was locked again. Now, due to the possibility of Kennedy Airport also being a target, people scrambled to get away fast from the airport. You know, you just grab your stuff and go.
Yeah. Find a taxi. Get the hell out of there.
Well, maybe not even that. Just run.
Damn.
Right? Now, this is where things get very weird. Baggage people or workers at the airport said that they saw two people in the locked airplane running inside the aircraft. This is post everyone getting off, including the pilots and the plane being locked.
After they checked to make sure everything was empty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, this was strange considering the public reaction as well. Everyone's trying to get away from the planes, trying to get away from the airport.
Meanwhile, there's these two people still in the plane.
Yep, and they're running down. But by this point, people began to put the puzzle together. The strange people asking about the White House and the two mysterious people running inside the locked aircraft.
How did they stay?
That never got answered in the documentary. Actually, it did to an extent.
Yeah.
But
when we get to it, I'll take over.
yeah, because
I'll fill it in.
I feel like I know what you're gonna say, and I have some opinions on it too.
Yeah.
Well, after all this, the pilot went to the chief pilot's office and he told him what he had witnessed on their aircraft. The pilot and crew were shuttled immediately to a nearby hotel, and they were terrified of what could have become, because by this point they are getting the news of everything that's happening on September 11th. The FBI would interview each one of them individually later on, and one of the workers pointed out the people she saw that were suspicious. She was able to point them out to the FBI, which means that they had photos or identities of the people on the plane.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I said 4, I meant 5.
Yeah.
During the interview, the FBI asked the purser why the floor hatch that enters into the electronics area of the aircraft was open. Do
Okay.
you know where this is, Patrick?
The electricity?
The hatch.
The floor hatch, it's like right at the front when you enter. It's right in front of like the door.
And it opens into the bottom of the plane?
Yes, where the
Oh.
electronics would be.
Okay.
And some other things there.
Damn, okay.
So yeah, keep note of where that hatch would be, Patrick. Okay. So after 20 minutes of the plane being deboarded and locked, like we mentioned, and the agents saw something strange, the people running, right? They decided to board the plane to check it out and found the hatch open when they got on board. If the hatch had been open with crew or passengers on board, it would not have been possible to leave. It had to have been open after the plane was emptied. Basically, it's in the entryway. Think of
Yeah.
it that way. So it's impossible. And it's big. I thought it was a small hatch. It's big.
Yeah, it's pretty big in there.
It's really big. Now, the FBI questioned the crew about whether they had noticed the carpet, they moved it, or if they noticed the hatch open. Everyone said no, of course. The crew has no idea why this would have been open. They have no idea of anything in this situation. Now, the pilot speculates that someone could use it as a way to get on board and get rid of potential evidence. Now, we'll get back to his theory in a second. Never mind, we'll get back to it right now. My notes are a little funny. The pilot of the United 23 raises the theory that people dressed in uniform could have been in on this, and they went up through the hatch to get rid of evidence on the flight.
Because the thing about this hatch is that in order to get into there, there's an entrance through the bottom of the plane from the outside.
Okay.
Correct.
So you can actually open like this hatch thing, pulled yourself in, and now you're inside of the plane into
Okay.
like this control room.
Right,
And then
with-
you go up another hatch, you're inside of the actual plane.
Correct.
Okay. And if you go in, the cockpit is right behind you, and everybody else is in front of you.
I guess, that would be correct. Yeah.
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 Okay.
Well, the crew was brought up to a lineup later on to see if they could identify anyone, and they could not. They could not identify anybody there, right? There's a lot of filler in this documentary as well, some little things here and there, right? So we're trying to just kind of get you guys through this, but so if we miss anything, we apologize. But we get to this point later on where the chief pilot reported to the other pilot, the pilot of Flight 23, that a flight that was marked one number off the tail number of Flight 23, they had found box cutters in the first class seats.
Oh. Okay. Yeah, and box cutters, if I remember, were like a very important tool used by the terrorists in
Yeah.
9/11. I actually don't know what they specifically used the box cutters for. Do you guys know?
I think it's
Yeah,
to threaten the
attack
people.
people?
Oh, because it was easy. It was an easy weapon to sneak in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
they could get
easy, yeah.
through like metal detectors.
And no, because like I think what they believe is that people came in from the bottom of the plane,
Yep.
put in things like they set up the box cutters and stuff when people weren't on board, and
preparation.
in preparation for that. Also, they talked about how before people even get on planes, there's a bunch of people loading stuff on there constantly. Like people are loading on food, like water and all this stuff. There could have been somebody that was like hired from the actual company to bring on stuff that might have been in on it too.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously by this point, it just, the pilot on the documentary is very clear that I was clearly scared because he's realizing the truth that, okay,
They were a target.
they
Yeah.
could have been a target. Yeah, because the flight right next to him had the
Yeah.
box cutters, but the suspicious people were on his flight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a mistake on the terrorist part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they just happened to be on the wrong plane.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the FBI had people from the flight in mind. I believe by the end of the investigation, or to the knowledge of the pilot and staff, they had 7 people in mind. Now, the public, the pilot, they have no idea who was questioned or who was actually involved of the 7 people. Now, of these 7 people, we do believe that the 5 that were mentioned earlier are part of this group.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Who's this? We don't know where the other 2 came from, to be honest.
Yeah.
Could have been workers, could have been just other people they stopped. There were also a lot of, we also know that at this time they were just trying to get anyone who had any chance of a connection to this, right?
Mhm.
Even the kid?
Well,
I think he was involved too.
I think the kid was involved, which is sad, but I'm
Yeah.
also guessing that they had to get the kid.
Where? What would he even have? What would his job have been?
Because the whole can he see the cockpit thing?
He's just a distraction.
You know, no, it's just like because
He's
back
the-
in the day, people would be like, "Hey, can I take my kid to go see the cockpit?" Because it was just a cool experience thing for
Yeah.
like, them
Yeah.
to see.
And they would let him do it literally mid-flight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the kid was just there to be like,
He was the key to get in.
yeah,
Now, our last interaction with the pilot on this documentary is he states nobody from the 9/11 Commission or the government contacted him. The only people who talked to him with higher authority was the FBI. In post those interviews, he has not received any sort of contact since then. Now, after 3 years, 600 pages, the 9/11 Commission issued a report of the entire terrorist attack. That includes over 1,200 interviews with people in over 10 countries. It's a long, detailed report. They got so deep in there. However, the commission was limited in time and resources. That is a fact that is well known now. This 600-page detailed report makes no mention whatsoever about Flight 23, even though from this documentary there's clearly been an investigation made. Now, TMZ did file a Freedom of Information, whatever thing from the FBI.
Mhm.
They have not received any comment, and they have not received any information from the FBI regarding this investigation.
which they find sketch because it's like if those people were not involved, why didn't they just say no? They're not involved.
Well, the
Yeah.
pilot also did mention that if they are involved, he could understand why there's also nothing being said about them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, it's like, oh, it's not that it was just sheer dumb luck that nothing happened.
No, but even like talking about the people, like he was asking, like at some point he's like, what happened to the people that were asked? about it. You know, like what happened to those 5 guys? And they're like, they didn't say anything about it.
Damn.
Yeah, they just don't comment on it.
Yeah.
They won't say anything about it. Now, there is some speculation that in the report, the 9/11 Commission, basically the rule was if it was something that they couldn't explain, they left it out.
Mhm.
If it wasn't complete, they just left it out. Again, this commission was very limited in resources and time.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like just like the JFK Commission.
Yeah.
The JFK Assassination Commission also was underfunded,
Yep.
understaffed, and had to deliver a message in a very, very quick amount of time.
Yeah.
In a very short amount of time.
Damn, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Now, as much as we'd love to go through the entire 40-minute documentary, everyone should go and watch it. It's very well made.
It's
Everything's
very,
awesome.
very good.
Now, the ending of the documentary gets a little sadder because it also it hits on the realistic aftermath of people who may have not been directly in the attacks, but these airline stewardess and workers, they were traumatized.
Yeah.
And ultimately, they deserve some kind of compensation, some kind of help.
Because every single one of them believes that they were the 5th plane. Like if things went according to their plan, they would have all been like dead.
Or if it simply wasn't a busy taxiing day for the planes, they
Yeah.
would have been in the air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they, they understandably were terrified. And to this day, they still feel that fear. The documentary continues and it goes into the unfortunate side where most of their companies fought tooth and nail to keep from paying them any type of, what would you call it?
Compensation.
Compensation. It got to the point where some people were just offered a lump sum of money, but they were also forced to sign a document that basically said you cannot work for our company or any of our subsidiaries.
Yeah.
Essentially, most people were fired with some kind of money.
God, that my heart just breaks for them.
Yeah.
Well, the idea was, someone in the documentary mentions that the idea is that if everyone in the world were to sue or ask for workers' comp because of this terrorist attack, because they were affected in some way or another, it would crash the economy.
Yes.
Now, obviously, that is true to some extent. However, it is fair to say that these specific people on United 23 were their trauma is very different than someone who witnessed the events maybe across the country.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They were directly involved in what could have been a hijacking or just simply in a bad situation where they're fighting people on board, right?
Yeah.
We don't know what this could have become.
Like the pilots in the front were ready.
Yeah, they had to
They
be.
they were ready with weapons just at any moment that they could have been stormed.
Yeah. That's pretty much all I got for you guys. I stopped taking notes after that part because I wanted to stick to the actual flight part. But
Yeah.
Patrick, what's your reaction so far? Because again, we can't sit here and say this is true, this is not true, whatever, right? What is your opinion? What's your take, Patrick?
God, I'm just horrified. I'm just so sad for them.
Yeah.
Like I that's such a nightmare situation. God, that was such a different world. You
Yeah.
know, it was so different, and then it changed everything, and everything was terrible. I remember 9/11,
Yeah.
and like I was really young, but I still remember it. Yeah, no, there was just this uncertainty in the air. There was so much mistrust, and like nobody took planes.
Yeah.
Nobody flew for a while.
There were
Yeah.
fighter jets out. Whenever the plane even missed one radio call, immediately fighter jets would fly out.
Yeah, no.
But how do you feel about the idea that there's like a 5th one?
Specifically this one.
Yeah.
Specifically that one. You know,
Is it plausible to you?
like why doesn't nobody know about it? You know, that's just kind of what I'm wondering is.
Oh, so you it sounds like you think that this could have been one.
I mean, I haven't seen the doc myself, but if all of this is true and if all of that,
What do you mean if? My reporting skills are top notch, sir.
yeah,
You
like,
insulting his ability to retain information and write it down?
I might not be able to read, but I can watch something 10 times and eventually get it.
well, I mean, eyewitness testimony is like you can't ever really trust it. More and more people talk about it, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, So, but like,
Well, like the weird stuff where like the people were like the two guys who were walking on the plane when like everybody had already left.
yeah, that's bad.
The fact that there was box cutters on a plane right next to it.
Yes, that's damning. That part. That's the part that I keep returning to.
The hatch that was open that
Yes.
wasn't when everybody had already evacuated.
And it was like the only plane in the airport. I
Yeah.
imagine that had something like that. Yeah, no, that truly sounds like something heinous was about to happen there, and they just got out of there by the skin of their teeth, or however that goes. Yeah, I guess based on what I'm hearing, I would kind of have to believe this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God, my heart just breaks for those people and everybody who was on that plane, not just the workers, just
Yeah.
like, God, do you think do they know like
The
like-
workers?
No, not the workers, the people who were on it.
The passengers.
Oh, like the passengers?
Yeah, like
hopefully not.
Yo, I would assume no.
probably not.
I just think if I took a flight on September 11th, I'd just rather not look up my flight. I wouldn't want to know that I was possibly in a plane that could have gone that bad.
Yeah.
You know, there's like this famous story about Seth MacFarlane, the creator of Family Guy.
Yeah.
He was supposed to be on one of them,
Yeah.
Yes.
but he got drunk the night before on, what was it? It was like some whiskey or something.
Uh-huh.
Moonshine?
And- no, it was not moonshine. It was the one with the brown bottle with the black Jack Daniels.
Oh, the black beer with 3 X's on it, like in cartoons?
Yeah, like how Peter Griffin drinks. Yeah, no, because of Jack Daniels, he was too hungover and he missed his flight.
Dang.
And yeah, that's just like one of those weird things. But God, I wish I had more like things to say. I kind of wish I saw, like, you guys told me not to watch it, so I could like my reaction could be like raw and stuff.
Yeah.
But
I forgot you actually take things and ponder them.
I do.
That was our mistake.
Yeah, because I'm gonna have thoughts like tomorrow when I'm more awake.
And then you're going to be like, here's my full opinion.
Yeah. And we'll update you then.
Yeah. It's like, I saw the doc. Guys, this was clearly made by AI.
That would be crazy. I would be like, brother. But no, I highly recommend that you watch it, and like the listener too, like watch this documentary because it just came out like 4 days ago. Something
Yeah.
like
I
that?
mean, by the point, yeah.
by the
But
time this comes out,
3 years ago.
yeah.
Well,
And
go
no,
ahead.
but it's getting a lot of traction. Like, cause like last I looked, it had 2.3 million views. So it's fucking. I don't know.
And I mean, we'll never be able to do justice to what the story is. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
they present the story very well, and the visuals are very captivating.
And the emotion on the people that were
Yes.
there.
I mean, we cannot give you the emotion they're giving, but I
Yeah.
mean, you can tell by our monotone voices this episode that we try to be very good boys on this one.
Yeah.
Or it's just hard to be funny.
Yeah.
It's not hard for us to be funny,
Okay. Okay.
but this episode makes it hard.
Yeah.
Here's my opinion on this. When I was younger, I did have a friend who their aunt worked at O'Hare Airport. And there were rumors that people already knew. A lot of airport workers knew there were more planes that were meant to be hijacked. Now, does that mean that O'Hare Airport had, some kind of suspicious activity? Who's to say? But I would imagine that airport workers talk within each other and things like that. And I believe some of them work from airport to airport.
Mm-hmm.
So that news must have spread fast. And I guess it is very well known within the O'Hare Airport peoples and maybe Midway as well that they was already known that there were more planes. There was planes missing, which obviously now we know were planes that were landing wherever they could, right? Again, on the other side of, on Canada side, things like that. There's very early beliefs in 2001 that there were more planes meant to be hijacked. So my opinion on this is simply, this must be one of the planes that we know about. But in my opinion, it is what it is. I think this hijacking they had more planes planned. And the 4 that unfortunately got to their targets, 3 that got to their targets and the one that killed too many passengers.
Mhm.
My opinion is that I believe it, the hijacking was just a mass plan, and they just try to get as many planes as they could in the air.
Mm.
And I think that Flight 23, unfortunately, is just one of the few stories that we're ever going to find out about plan not working, essentially.
Yeah.
I'm very, I believe it. I believe their story. I believe what they're saying.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Patrick's right. This whole thing changed the world. And I do believe also the workers deserve something. They
Mhm.
deserve some kind of compensation. They were nearly in one of the world's worst attacks in
Yeah.
recent history.
Yeah.
I mean, how could you not compensate people for that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Now to play devil's advocate.
Oh no!
No. I'm joking. No, but I understand what the person on the documentary was trying to say about not everyone can sue their employer and things.
Yeah.
I understood that, but like, and also I believe that's the person who basically said yes, that was the argument, but they had outlying circumstances. Dude, how much more connected could you have been? Like, you were on the closest thing to another flight in these attacks.
Yeah.
How could you fight tooth and nail to hurt these people? Patrick, you don't know. We didn't mention this because we just didn't think to put it in there. Most of these workers had worked for United for 30 years.
Yeah.
Of course I did.
Yeah.
Of course I did. Just to make the story even more sad.
Yeah.
Just to make the story even worse. Just to
Exactly.
show like the corporate greed.
Yes.
Yeah, to
So-
just be like, you can't eat. They've served you loyally, and by the grace of God, nobody got hurt. You can't cut them a check.
So
Yeah.
it begs the question, though, now.
Because-
It was the reason to not hide, but keep this information from coming out, was to hide the corporate greed that was happening during terrorism attacks? Or was it also, there is an idea, and I don't know how true this is, that the United States already knew about several of these hijackers or terrorists. They already had them profiled or identified before the September 11 attacks. There's that belief. I don't know how true that is. I've never looked into it, right? So it begs the question, right? What is the reason why we never got information about this, right? The biggest terrorist attack, it took us into a war. Why have we not talked about the possibility of maybe there were more planes? What
Yeah.
would that kill for anyone else? Would it make people feel more unsafe that, oh, the government really didn't have a handle on this? Like, obviously not. It's a terrorist attack.
Yeah.
Or was it hiding something else that, like, again, the 9/11 Commission basically says we were underfunded, we didn't have time.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's possible.
Yeah, but also like they said, like if they came out and were like, yeah, your plane did have something to do with it, then the airlines, like they said, would have to like pay them up front, and it could ruin the economy. So for that reason
Their
alone,
business.
Yeah.
Not the economy, their business. Let's
yeah,
be real.
yeah,
Yeah, but it begs the question of why. At the end of the day, whether or not there was a fifth plane or not, I don't really think in 2025 it really affects our our perspective on what happened on September 11th. It happened. It's the most tragic event in U.S. history. But at the end of the day, the question now is, why don't we have this information public? Because even when you look this stuff up, you will not find public information on it.
You know, I'm trying to think of it because it's like, my thought was, if it really was like, actually it was it wasn't just 4 or 5 planes, it was 200. Just throwing like all, like in every, like that's how big they were trying to go. And it was supposed to be also the Washington Monument, and it was all supposed to be this place, and it was all supposed to be that place. Chicago. Statue of Liberty, Chicago, like Tennessee. Like it could have been all these places.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But if everybody knew, probably maybe tons of stories like Flight 23. If people truly knew the scope of it, maybe we would, because my thought was maybe they don't want to scare us too much, but they did. They wanted to scare us into agreeing to go into a war because they milked that footage and they made everybody very, very scared and very angry to like co-sign, yes, let's go invade, you know?
Well, don't many people believe that's the reason Bush won again?
Yes, he used it. He used it for sure, and he used it so that way people could be scared and angry, and he was able to win an election because of it. At least that's what people say. I was only 6 at the time, but yeah.
Yeah, my opinion as a 6-year-old is real.
I really had my thumb on the pulse.
yeah. It's not to say, because like I feel like some people like think that it's like an inside job. It's not that he didn't do it he didn't like do it in order to get reelected, but
No,
he
we're
did
not.
capitalize on the
Yeah.
fact that it happened.
He saw his moment and he seized it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is somewhere we can end it on, and it's something that maybe listeners can think about a little bit. When people talk about things like 9/11 or maybe any other thing where any other tragedy, let's say, where people believe the US government had something to do with it. I don't think I think in this time and age, as sexy as conspiracy theories are sometimes, right?
Yeah, they're fun.
They're fun.
Yeah.
But it's more of an escape from the reality.
Yeah.
I looked into some other theories about like the things about Tower 7, about money missing, things like that. Or a missile hitting the Pentagon rather than a plane. There are many studies, there are many documents, there are many evidence basically saying like, hey, these are all crazy ideas, and a lot of people believe that it's just a way to cope with this. You don't want to believe that the country was a victim,
Yeah.
and which is fair. But I think TMZ is doing us a service with this documentary by presenting the idea of like questioning the reality of what else happened. Because let's be honest, like, let's say other tragedies, right? We saw on TV what happens, but what happened to the people who had to go home that day? What
Yeah.
happened to the paramedic who had to work 3 days in a row to help survivors or whatever the case may be, right?
Yeah, like in a way you don't want to believe that like another country has like this power over us.
Yeah.
You know?
But it also brings up points of like, well, let's say for example, right? Someone was screwed over while working during the tragedy of 9/11. Let's say it was someone a firefighter, let's
who
say.
breathed in a lot of ash, and
Yep.
now the government won't still cover his health care, which is very true and happening right now.
Yeah.
Exactly. What I'm trying to say is I think it does bring up a point of maybe not. I mean, does this sound kind of like a conspiracy theory? I can understand why it sounds like that, but I think the reality is we're questioning what else.
Yeah.
What else happened besides just the main picture? And I think those side pictures also deserve the same amount of attention. So I think Flight 23 does deserve some attention right now. And I think rightfully so, people should question why there's no information public. But
Wait.
again, Pilot does make a good point that if the people were involved, that's why they're not talking about it. So I don't know where to think.
That makes a lot of sense though, because it's like if all of these people were involved and they have a right to get compensated for it, like say like United has to pay them all out, then where does that stop? Because it's like, yeah, the firefighters and people that were in the actual wreckage, they breathed in all like the air. Won't they have to also be compensated for it too?
Yes.
You know what I mean? So it just keeps on going, you know?
Well, they can't. Yeah, because in that case, you can't argue it's like, well, you're a firefighter. You're going to breathe that in no matter what. It's like, no, this is an outlying circumstance. A whole building fell.
Yeah.
You know, so this is way beyond the scope of what the job entails
Yeah.
and the risk that it entails, right?
Yeah. I feel like you have to stop it somewhere because then it's just going to snowball into a lot of things. And then that will break the economy. You know what I mean?
Damn, we are adults now. We didn't even take it a whole conspiracy angle on this.
I still think they should get paid.
Well, yeah,
Oh,
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I think
That's not
that's-
much of a conspiracy. That's
like,
an opinion
That's
now.
like a but
Yeah.
I mean, I'm explaining like why they're probably not.
Yeah. No, I get it. I completely get it. But you know what? You listener, do yourself a service. Go watch it. Great documentary. No, okay. Well, it wasn't great in terms of what... You get what I mean.
It's a great documentary. The things that it's
Well
talking
made.
about kind of suck, for sure. But the documentary itself was
A+.
very,
A+.
very well made.
Definitely like listen to some nice music.
I know we got
afterwards.
30 seconds on this, but can we just quickly mention why the hell did TMZ just drop like this all of a sudden?
Yeah.
Like, okay, Emmy time?
Yeah.
Oh, at the same time, Addison Rae dropped her new album. Is it all connected?
And we're done.
Because that
And we're done.
album
Then we're done.
sucks.
This
And
was Dynamic Trio
This
Pod.
has been Alex.
This is James.
This has been Patrick.
You'll never hear from us again.
Follow us on TikTok at Dynamic Trio Pod.
And then you can email us at dynamictriopod@gmail.com. Listener, again, keep us on your socials.
Yeah.
Comment, because Tatum
Mm-hmm.
has been on it.
Did you
Comment
like this
once.
content? Tatum.
Do you identify as a baby goat?
Shut
No!
All right, bye.